One other thing in the report, there was of course, the BuzzFeed story about the Trump Tower project. Remember, BuzzFeed reported a while ago that, but anyone who takes BuzzFeed seriously, I really feel bad for you. BuzzFeed was the outlet that reported on the dossier first. It really did a disservice to the Trump team, reported a bunch of fake information. But remember the BuzzFeed scoop that Trump told Cohen a lie about the Trump Tower project in Moscow, the story we referenced before? That story is completely bunked now. BuzzFeed, whatever BuzzFeed tells you, BuzzFeed said they had sources on this. It's completely wrong. It's just made up. Um, and a couple other things on this before I get to some tying it all up for you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important we remember here because Andy McCabe was on another network, was it MSDNC or something last night, the former deputy director of the FBI, and the spin operation with the FBI has begun already. They are trying to move the goalpost here. Andy McCabe wants you to focus, and Comey will do this too, on why they started the investigation. They will lay out these standards saying, hey, if there's a suspicion of a national security threat, we can open up an investigation. Fine. Okay, I don't believe it was a legitimate suspicion. Andy McCabe knew from the start this whole dossier and all this stuff was garbage. I get that. But point stipulated. The criteria for opening up an investigation by the FBI, even when I was in the Secret Service, is very small. A lot of times, folks, you'll get a tip believe a crime was ever committed. My suggestion here is that the FBI started a case because some people at the top got hosed and didn't like Donald Trump, so they were just apt to open it anyway. But even stipulating that point, what McCabe wants to do is get you focused on why they opened the investigation, but not why they swore to a FISA warrant. Now, again, I'm going to rely on Paula here because Joe is off today in an unusual Bongino show without producer Joe. I'm going to rely on a thumbs up or thumbs down from Paula. This text thing works great, by the way. If this doesn't make sense, you got to stop me. What McCabe is doing is he's trying to divert your attention from the swearing of warrants and the introduction of the court process and spying into it to opening the case. What do I mean? Okay, you open a case. There's nothing illegal about that. But ladies and gentlemen, there is something very illegal about walking into a court system and swearing that information is in fact true, the dossier, in a FISA court when it is not and hasn't been verified and you're obligated to verify it. Be careful. You're going to see a lot of this in the coming days by Clapper, by Brennan, by Comey, by McCabe, by this cabal of idiots who ran this thing, where they're going to try to keep your attention on why they open a case. Well, we were suspicious, knowing that there's very little ammunition for us to fight back on that. Your suspicions, it's a gray area. They're going to say, I was suspicious. We're going to fire back with the truth. You were suspicious of what? A dossier? It was Hillary's information. But they're going to say, okay, fair enough, but we were obligated to investigate it. Fine. All right. Whatever. However wrong you are, point stipulated. But you did a horrible job. You weaponized your position. You abused your power. But there's very little for me to say. It's hard for me to question their suspicion. You get it? That's why Andy McCabe keeps saying this. Well, this is why we opened up a case, and I think we did the right thing. No, Andy. No. You're not going to get away with that. That is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about when you open that case, why you walked your butt into a FISA court with your agents and raised your right hand and swore that the information you used to open up the case was true when it wasn't. It was fake. It was debunked. You signed off on it. You were obligated to sign off on verified information pursuant to the Woods procedure, and it wasn't verified. It was false. Don't fall for the trap. I have a note here about McCabe to say that. It's important. So that's another takeaway from this. Do not let them switch the argument from swearing information out in the FISA court, which is patently illegal. You cannot swear to false information. Do not let them switch it to why we opened up a case. Secondly, there's a point from the beginning of this case, Andy McCarthy, brilliant writer, writes at New York Post and National Review, has made. And I'm going to wrap it with this because it's important. When you're a federal agent working a conspiracy case, remember the conspiracy case at some point requires knowledge of at least some of the players in the conspiracy. Not everyone has to know what everyone is doing, but to allege that you're knowingly colluding with the Russians, you have to know which Russians you're colluding with. If I'm colluding with a Russian guy to rob a bank and the whole story is that I colluded with a Russian guy and I think he's Polish, I didn't knowingly collude with a Russian. I may have robbed a bank, but I didn't collude with a Russian. I didn't know he was Russian. The mens rea is going to matter. The criminal mind. What did I know? What was my intent? It's going to matter. The conspiracy require not everybody has to know everything about a conspiracy. Keep that in mind. There's some low-level players who may not know what the grand poobah of the operation is doing. That doesn't mean you're not guilty. But at some point, to be a member of a conspiracy, you're going to have some knowledge of how the conspiracy works and some of the players. I want to keep this. I want you to keep this at the front of your mind while reading the report. He lays out all these big connections to the Russians and all this other stuff. He never lays out at any point, Mueller, at the report. And McCarthy brings this up. We brought this up a year ago. No one has ever pleaded guilty. And Mueller never lays out in the report what the conspiracy actually was, because there was none. Mueller debunks the conspiracy entirely because he can't, but goes again, beats the drum the entire time to explain a conspiracy that never happened. He explains all these suspicious Russian connections and explains later that they were innocent. Why? But why are you writing this then? I don't understand. Your report was to investigate and report on Russian collusion, not contacts with Russian people. It's not illegal. He does nothing to explain Hillary Clinton's Russian contacts. Nothing. And the use of her Russian sources for Christopher Steele. He explains none of that. Zero. No one in this case has ever pled to the conspiracy, and no one has ever explained what the conspiracy is besides the lunatic media and the Democrats. What's the conspiracy for them? Russians hacked the email, gave them to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks gave them to the Trump team. That didn't happen. WikiLeaks took the emails, didn't know these people were Russian. WikiLeaks did not, in fact, secretly back channel this information to the Trump team in an effort to harm the Hillary Clinton campaign. The WikiLeaks email, it's funny, in the Mueller report, the WikiLeaks takes shots at the Republicans do. Folks, this whole thing is garbage. There is no conspiracy. No one has ever pled guilty to it because it doesn't exist. It did not happen. It is as simple as that.